Like, it's the biggest news. I was actually driving back up from Mayo. I knew the sentence was happening, DJ Carey's sentence, and you heard 5.5 years and you feel like stopping for a moment. I mean, 5.5 years, the people I'm usually writing about, that's a small sentence. They get over it. They do it with their hands tied behind their back. It's almost part of their world. They expect to go in and out of prison. And, they know people when they get in there. It's a totally different thing for DJ Carey. This is a huge fall from grace. And we have to imagine it may be difficult for him in prison to cope with the loss of freedom, which is your, not being able to walk down the street to the shop. That's what I always think about in prison. Are the door closing at night, 7 or 8 o'clock in the evening, and that's you until somebody opens the door on you.
It's an extraordinary fall from grace. It's hard to believe it. I was in the court on Monday and I was standing in the courtroom so that I had a view of DJ Carey and watched him as the judge went through the sentence. Now, I know in cases like that, maybe you'll say guys are mentally prepared. They don't want to give away much. But still, not any sign whatsoever, not a flicker. Very calm demeanor. His hands were clasped. He was wearing the same clothes that he wore on Friday, without the tie. And I mean, there was a gasp. I don't know where the gasp came from, but somewhere in the courtroom behind me, people in Kilkenny were shocked by the sentence. Now, not everyone, it has to be said. Like, the community is deeply divided, but there are some that would have been saying to me until the last minute, and I nearly have to shake it off and forget what people are saying and just stay in the middle, because there was always been so many rumours about DJ Carey. It's always been hard to substantiate stories about DJ Carey. There's always been drama around him, even on the field. Like, it's something else. Like, he brought a lot of excitement in hurling, but even in his life, he was the focus of so many different events. He was always, it seemed, somebody targeted him for crimes, actually. There was high-speed car chases reported on front pages, Starsky and Hutch style car chases that he was involved with because somebody stole his Beamer when he went in and was paying for his petrol or diesel in Crookstown one day. And he said, the quotes are unbelievable, Nicola. Like, stuff like, if you have a 50 grand car underneath you, you fight for it.
Right.
He gave this guy chase. I mean, apparently the Garda helicopter was on and everything, but of course they couldn't catch this guy. It was DJ Carey who managed to pin him down. And DJ Carey was the source of this story. And because Ireland is small, a lot of journalists talk. Now, I'm just a local journalist for many years. Previously, when I was in my early 20s, I worked for the Indo, but the bulk of my time has been on the local beat, Carol Kilkenny. So the journalist who wrote that front page story for the Examiner, she's a little bit more experienced, a little bit older than me. So I saw her name on the front of the Examiner going through the archives, and I rang her, Nance McSweeney, and she said, DJ was always good for a quote and it was always dramatic.
Right. And he always made the headlines. And he had colourful romances, high-profile romances with ladies. We're going to come on to all of that. I get the impression, Eimear, that this is a slightly uncomfortable place for you to be in because it's a local story, but you were compelled to write it. I presume it drew you in.
There's something about DJ Carey that I find fascinating. Because of the little contradictions that I suppose were always there. I didn't know what it was. I didn't understand it. I sometimes felt like I was missing something, that there was a private joke about him. Now, I thought he was straight up, I have to say. I thought he was lovely, so accessible. She'd be excited if you ever got an interview with a celebrity, and in Kilkenny it doesn't get any bigger than DJ. So if you could get DJ on your radio show, you knew you would be having the listeners tuned in. But there were times when I'd hear odd things. Just little things, not terribly bad or anything, but just like, poor DJ. That was the narrative. I wonder how he's getting on. I heard he owes somebody money. We thought, he wasn't a great businessman. He got involved in relationships, and there was a lot of sympathy for DJ Carey, but most people maybe weren't in the inner circle. There were people like an Open Secret who were in the know. And really, really extraordinary, I suppose. the victims in this case, they are the ones that would have found it really hard. Because remember, they didn't turn on Carey. The Gardaí contacted them. And some of them were so torn about giving a statement to Gardaí. Some of them actually still thought that DJ Carey had cancer when they were in the Garda station, and the Gardaí brought them in because their names showed up in his bank transactions. And they wanted to talk to them about why did they give DJ Carey, say, 5 grand, 10 grand, 120 grand, whatever they asked. And the people involved found it hard to believe because they had heard his story, his cancer story, in graphic detail.
And they'd been duped. And there is a thing about fraudsters, and it's why I find them very complex characters. And we were speaking before we came on here about there can be kind of multiple things going on, compulsions and maybe personality disorders going on in the background that come together. But people who are tricked, be it into handing over €20 or €200,000, they have trusted the person, they've looked into their eyes, they've had them in their home, they've kind of accepted them into their lives. So it's this double whammy. It's not just the money. People feel stupid, they question themselves, and they question everything because this reality that has been in front of them turns out to be a total fraud. And it's really hard. I think it's probably one of the crimes, where the victim, I don't think we fully understand how devastated they can be. And it goes way beyond the money.
That's it. I've seen the text messages between some of the victims and DJ. And he got very creative. And the level of detail that he went into, I mean, gut-wrenching detail. Kilkenny's a small place. So some of the victims that are part of the Garda investigation, you see, I was doing my own kind of digging, and I didn't want to go near the Gardaí at that stage because I needed to get a little bit ahead in terms of just gathering info first and seeing what was going on. And of course, a lot of people don't want to talk to the Gardaí, and there's reasons for that maybe, that they would be concerned they didn't tell their spouse, they gave them money, etc. So the first time I knew how many victims the Gardaí were dealing with was when there was obviously some kind of leak and a list of names appeared in the Irish Times. I think it was September 23. It was around 23 anyway, that time of the year. And that spooked people involved. And when I looked at the Irish Times, I said, I was picking out the names. And these are people, I'm working down the road and up the road and around the corner. And it was extraordinary. And that unsettled on the victims, because at that stage, many people were still in disbelief. Sure, he must have cancer, So in the graphic detail that I mentioned, I'm thinking of 2 victims now where he said things to this effect, that he was in just having his spleen removed, and he was talking about full body blood transfusions, and he was talking about procedures, and there was a lot of detail.
And then you're sort of, I imagine if you're in that position, you're hearing this is a lie and you're going, well, if I accuse this guy of it being a lie and he is actually sick, you're so conflicted because you'd feel so awful if you were wrong or if somebody had got it wrong. So you have to be completely convinced that it's right before you call out a guy who's claiming he's that sick.
Well, this was a few years ago. So in the cases of the people he targeted, they didn't even have a whiff of Walter Mitty about him at this stage, right? So that's important to say because people who were in the know knew, and then there were people that absolutely did not know.
Yeah.
So we'd say even around 2021, at this stage, he's on the rampage. He's cold calling people, he's sending text messages. Are you free to take a call? Now, I reckon he has to have copied and pasted that message and sent it to lots of people in his phone book because I haven't met, I'm sure, even a fraction of the people that have been duped. But that message I've seen in different people's interactions with him, the very same message. Are you free to take a call, DJ? And if you did take a call, and some people did, the ask was swift. He was ruthless. But he was smart as well, even though I know he's been described as, not book smart, and people say different things about him that would have say over the years interacted with him through hurling and through handball. But at the same time, he was able to categorise people. So if he met somebody like me, he'd nearly have worked out my earnings. He'd be kind of saying, right, I might at the most get 1 to 3 or want 5 grand off that lady, right? Because he'd nearly know your salary. But then he'd move up the ranks and say, so he'd run with a simple story for me, the likes of me maybe, and he might say something like, I have to go to the United States. I have to go to the Fred Hutch Cancer Centre in Seattle. I'm very sick. I'm having life-saving treatment. And I'd say, oh, Jesus, DJ, that's terrible. And then he might say something like, well, you know, thankfully my medical costs are covered because of my elite world handballing status. And I'm short a couple of grand for the flights. And I have to go next week. I hate asking you. I'm under terrible pressure.
Right.
So that's where he might get between 1 and 5 grand. But then DJ would move up the ranks and he might say, there's a businessman now. He's worth a lot of money. And this actually worked for DJ Carey in some cases. Now, remember, a lot of people refused him money as well. So a lot of people heard his stories and just something didn't feel right. But some, you know, this guy was the ultimate hero. He was clean living. He was credible to them. He was somebody that they trusted.
He's famous,
Absolutely.
which of course went...
And they interacted with him for years before this, but there wasn't an ask for money until now.
People kind of like the idea of knowing somebody. In Ireland, is anybody famous? You know what I mean? But it's like they like the idea of being able to say to their friends, I was talking to DJ or I was talking, don't they? There's that sort of...
Absolutely. We love it. Sure, we'd love to name drop in a nice way, because if you said, and people always mention this to me, if you said you were from Kilkenny, or I worked in Kilkenny, Carlow local radio, first thing they'd say to me is, oh, do you know DJ Carey? You know, if you were abroad or something. Now, I know not now in recent years.
Yes, but back in the day,
Yes, people were very excited about him. So his big story for the big businessman or the higher net worth individual would be, after he said at some stage that he had gotten too much radium when he was being treated for his cancer in St. James's Hospital, that he had a medical negligence case pending with the HSE, that he was due to get compo. Now the figure, you know, sometimes there's discrepancies in the accounts people give me, but generally between 1.5 and 1.8 million was going to land in his account, he said, from the HSE. But he needed to settle with the banks first. He owed the banks. If he could just settle with them, they were going to, he said, settle all his debt. If he gave them 120 grand, then he could get that done, and then the compensation would be coming afterwards and he'd pay you back.
Right.
So this wasn't something that foolish people fell for or anything like that. I know of a businessman who got a solicitor to look at this and the loan was checked out. DJ's story was very credible. He also, remember, had paperwork. We now know, it was fraudulent. But this is the type of thing he did.
Full-time job.
That's what I mean.
To keep it all going, And of course then you will copy and paste the text, because you don't want to be writing them out all the time when he was at the height of what he was doing.
And interestingly, some people got tipped off. So there are people who had a lot of suspicions about Carey and they stopped their mates from getting burned.
Both you and I would be in unison as regards our ignorance, we call it, as regards the actual sort of technicalities of the game he played. But we do know who this guy was. You've been to plenty of GAA matches where he was playing. You've interviewed him plenty of times. But let's go back to the beginning. Where did DJ Carey come from? His family life, you know, was there wealth there, or was it a struggle when he was a child?
I think DJ had a tough childhood in some ways, certainly, because think about rural Ireland in the 1970s. He grew up in a small village, Gorn, and the main thing to do in Gorn probably was to hurl. Religion was another thing. You'd go to Mass on a Sunday and you'd be hurling throughout the week. I spoke to a great man, DJ Carey's teacher and former school principal from Gorn National School. And John Knox, straight up guy. He didn't slam the door. He invited me in. And I knew he had his role, we'd say, in all of this. He was always in DJ's corner. Loves DJ because he's watched him in terms of sport, in his hurling. John ran the local hurling nursery, you might say. He had Charlie Carter, Pat O'Neill, DJ Carey, 3 of Kilkenny's greats in primary school. So when DJ was a little boy, there were aspects of his childhood that were lovely, I would say, because it was a beautiful place.
Simple life,
simple pleasures.
Many of them in the family.
Teacher. He had 7, there were 7 children, but 2 had died when DJ, one older brother, Thomas, died tragically in a cot death. And then there was brother John who died in a farm accident.
Right.
So certainly there was grief in the household growing up,
Yeah.
I would imagine.
So 5 surviving.
Money was tight, I'd say.
Money was tight. And they were farmers, were they?
They were farmers. So
Yeah.
his father, John Carey, had received land from the Land Commission to farm.
Okay.
And his mother, Maura, they did various jobs over the years. One of the jobs she had actually at one stage, I was told, was as a cook in St. Kieran's College, where DJ, that's where he progressed. So they had their eye on DJ. Lots of secondary schools would have had their eye on this little, they called him the little fella at the start, because they'd say on the sidelines, who's the little fella? Because he had lightning speed, and he became known as the artful dodger to his mates on the team, because he was able to sidestep and he was able to get out of trouble, get out of danger, because he'd be gone so many steps ahead before anyone could even count the steps. He was out of there with the schlitter. And in the early days, he'd be balancing the schlitter on the hurley on the walk to Gore National School.
Right.
He played hurling before school. He played hurling during school. He played hurling in the lunch breaks. He played after school. This was his life. He loved hurling.
And when you say they were watching him, so we're back in the sort of the 70s, 80s, I suppose. And this isn't the Premier League football. There's no money in this. This is a religion nearly, isn't it? Within the communities.
It is. And it's something that
to be proud of, but not something that's ever going to make you money.
Yeah, and I suppose that's difficult too when you're at the top of the game. I'd imagine there are times when, DJ Carey went for lunch with Tiger Woods at JP McManus's invite. Imagine Tiger sitting down with DJ, and DJ, everybody in Ireland knows him.
Yeah.
Doesn't need a surname. He's a superstar, right? He's been compared to God, almost like a Messi or a Pele,
yes,
or whoever. And Tiger is probably wondering, well, how much does he earn? And it's an amateur sport. It's breathtaking.
It is.
But at the same time, DJ's profile got him a lot of opportunities.
Of course.
So Corporate Ireland wanted him. He was very popular. There was big sponsors involved with Kilkenny GA and with the championship. Guinness were on board at this stage. DJ was on bus stops at one stage with the title The Real McCoy, advertising McCoy crisps. He advertised everything.
Yeah.
Even, some product for cows for mastitis.
And we're slightly jumping on there to when he becomes famous. So we have him in school, and obviously hurling is his absolute. And it's the dream of the community and of his family that he will one day line out in the Kilkenny colours, I presume. And he does so. There's a happiness in that family, you think?
I'm not sure. I think there's contradictions. I think there were times when DJ Carey was happy because he's my greatest source, even though he didn't cooperate with this, because DJ was so accessible to media outlets throughout his life. And he wrote his own autobiography. He did a video and DVD of his in 2003. And he did so many interviews. And when I gathered everything up, I got these insights into DJ Carey, just little telling things, I suppose, about him.
Does he go back to his childhood, or does he talk about it?
He does. So some of the happy stories, he would say birthday parties when there'd be 20 lads all playing hurling, and they'd only come in if one of them got a bloody nose. So I think that's a happy memory in Kilkenny anyway, that would be fun. But then there are other times people said to me, that the family would have struggled, that the parents tried their hand at different little enterprises, and they never really seemed to work out. People talked about, was there a chip van at one stage? Was there a hardware shop? The mother getting a job from Kieran's. The dad then worked for DJ in DJ Carey Enterprises eventually when he launched that in the mid-90s. And there were stories about how the mam wore the trousers and she'd hand him out the tenner for the lunch money. And
there was a lot of kids to feed there, wasn't there?
There was.
There was grief in that household. And, they were trying to eke a living.
Absolutely. And there were people who said to me, they went into that house and that you wouldn't meet a nicer family. I got lots of various accounts, and more than one thing can be true, so that there was a shrine there for DJ. Eventually, parents were very proud of DJ's success. They were very proud of him because people came from all over Ireland and to buy hurleys from the family, because his brother made hurleys as well. So many people were in that house and were welcomed into the house in Gorn.
So you talked about 2003, I think you said, when he made this DVD. So he's at
Bertie Ahern actually launched it for him.
So he's obviously at this point at the absolute height of his career on the pitch. He's advertising McCoy's crisps and various other things like that. How many years is he in total playing and committed to just playing?
Playing for Kilkenny?
Yeah.
Well, he was playing from the time he was a child up until the time of his retirement. So you're talking about, he gave so much of his life to sport, like nearly 2 decades.
Okay, so his 20s and 30s?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, up until...
And before?
And before. So,
and he retired and came back, didn't he?
He won, we'd say, he won 5 All-Ireland medals, but in 1988, even for St. Kieran's College, he won a college's final as well. So he burst onto the scene. When you think about it, he was still playing for Kilkenny. At that stage in 2003, 2004, 2005, he was still playing for Kilkenny.
Right. Because he went back and played, having announced his retirement. Is that right?
He announced his retirement very abruptly in 1998.
Right, in 98.
It was a shock decision.
Yeah.
And he himself admitted it was one of his more stupid decisions. He was only 27. He described how he was under a lot of pressure at the time. Things about money and business were mentioned, how he was taking a free, say, on a Sunday for Kilkenny, and he was worrying about balancing the books on a Monday. So there was a lot going on in his personal life.
Was there a bit of criticism though as well?
Absolutely.
And maybe he wasn't, I think I read somewhere that he came back out of retirement after the people of Kilkenny wrote to him en masse. About 20,000 people wrote adoringly asking him to come back out onto the pitch. Yeah. So are we seeing a bit of ego?
Well, there were stories and they were true. I found out from a local source who knew the postman even in Gorn that there were sacks of mail delivered to the house and people were shattered and were urging DJ Carey to get back and hurl for Kilkenny.
Right.
They didn't want to see him step away from the game. But earlier when I was mentioning to you about the dramatics, DJ loves headlines. So he'd fuel those headlines. There'd always be maybe a grain of truth in this. It was devastation, there's no doubt. It was a shock departure. There was people saying to him, please DJ, will you reconsider? He was the star player for Kilkenny. Yeah. And here he was walking away from the game and he hadn't quite peaked. And people around him knew that. He was 27, he had a good few years hurling left in him. So they wanted him to come back. And as it happens, 6 weeks later, he burst back onto the scene. Again, grabbed all the headlines.
I was going to say, yeah.
Press conference. Friend of mine, Damien Tiernan, he's in Waterford now in local radio there. He reported from the press conference. I was watching back the footage of it. That was a huge story that DJ was back and the headlines again.
And I do remember those headlines all about DJ. And as you mentioned briefly earlier, he didn't need a second name. You've really made it when you don't need your second name here in Ireland. There's not that many people who have that. So where do we go next? You're talking about, will we talk about when he sets up his DJ Carey Enterprises, is it?
Yes.
When does he do that?
So DJ set up DJ Carey Enterprises. It's a cleaning supplies business, detergents, paperware. Not very exciting maybe, but look at, there was the perception there, he'd be a great salesman because he was DJ Carey, would open doors for him. So he got this idea while he was working in another company that sold similar products and he set up in 1994.
Well, 94,
that's
so
when
all the way
it
back
really
then.
Started. Yeah. He might have had he might have been dabbling a little bit in business before then, but DJ Carey Enterprises seemed to have really come on the scene in 94.
Okay.
And he employed a lot of people at one stage. Good bit of pressure, people he knew. He gave jobs to his family. I'd mentioned his dad. There were others in the family. There was former teammates that worked for him as well. DJ, there was work there for people, but that came with pressure because it grew really fast. And DJ alludes to this a lot himself in his interviews over the years, the difficulties that come with running a business and trying to be a full-time elite sportsman as well, it has to be said, and not getting paid for it. And
we can see in those years, say we'll take 94 to 2003, 4, that's the real growth period. That's when Ireland starts really, shaking off the shackles of poverty, and we start becoming a kind of a rich country where there's opportunities for people, where businesses begin to thrive, where all of a sudden people can afford to buy cappuccinos and they don't have to make them at home anymore. So that is a big growth period. And he's obviously there with his business during that time. He's married as well, is he?
So his marriage broke down. It was a very high profile breakdown. It was written about on the front page of the Sunday Independent on the day of the All-Ireland Sunday in 2003. So you can imagine the shock in Kilkenny when this was printed on a front page with a photograph of his two little boys at the time and his former wife, Christine. And in reality, the marriage was over before then.
Before this was the headline,
maybe a year or 18 months before then. But that story would have unsettled a lot of people, saying Goran, because he was their hero. And this was somebody who was involved in an amateur sport, and it felt as though there was a huge intrusion into his private life.
Back in the days when newspapers would report if somebody's marriage broke up, you wouldn't really see that nowadays, no? With privacy laws now, people have moved on. I think media's moved on that people's private life usually, unless they speak about it themselves.
Yeah, and that's the thing as well about DJ. He'd crib about privacy issues, but then how he announced his relationship to the world, that he was in a new relationship with Sarah Newman, sometime after the public breakdown of the marriage to Christine, he went on safari and RTE followed them for No Frontiers, and they were on the front of the RTE guide. And that is kind of one of the contradictions, one of many contradictions. If you're scrutinising somebody's life, you want to be fair to them. But on the one hand, he's saying, listen, this was terrible what I've been through. And on the other hand, he's filming. He's on safari with his new girlfriend.
So this has to be a turning point for him, is it? His marriage breaks down. Sarah Newman was, in her own right, very famous, with business prowess. She was an incredibly successful, wasn't she a dragon on the Dragon's
Den? She surely was, yeah.
Very beautiful looking woman.
She made her millions. She was hugely successful. And she was also DJ Carey's partner, and we wouldn't have known.
A power couple sort of were born, essentially.
Pin-up couple for the Celtic Tiger, and at lots of events in the social diaries all the time.
And in his sort of I suppose his private life there and his business life, 2003, we're coming up to that really dangerous period if we're looking at the economy between 2003 and 7. There's a huge amount of money being loaned to people. There's a huge amount of properties being bought at hugely inflated prices. There's going to be a lot of people who are in trouble within a few years. Is this happening to him as well?
I'd say that was bubbling away behind the scenes, and he was likely trying to keep up appearances, and it has to have been hard at times. So there's times when I feel empathy with him.
How is he financially by 2003?
I would say, he had a business. The business was fairly modest, but he was tipping along. But when he met Sarah Newman, he entered a different world. Yeah. He entered the K Club type world. So a K Club, as you know, exclusive 5-star golf resort. Mount Juliet the same. So they met at Mount Juliet actually. A friend had introduced the pair. And from there on, DJ, and the description actually is brilliant that a man gave me, because it just cemented some of this for me, that DJ was like almost a choir boy type. He's not a drinker, he's not a smoker, he was a real kind of clean living person, we thought. And when he entered the K Club, maybe his trousers didn't fit him so well, maybe his blazer wasn't tailored the way, but people observed the transformation in him. He went from that, after he met Sarah then, the finest Gucci shoes, Gucci belts, people could see. And I've stories in the book, and the devil's in the detail. So like some of the detail that I found fascinating, that he was in terrible form one day in the K Club bar. It was mentioned to somebody, Sarah maybe had mentioned to somebody, and that he was not in good form because he didn't want to fly Ryanair, that he wanted NetJets. And that he was in a bit of a strop or a mood over that. So certainly that's a far cry from the DJ Carey we thought we knew, who was down to earth DJ, who'd have the tea and biscuits, who'd wave the hand when you'd offer him money at a medal presentation, and he'd say, no, the cup of tea is grand, put the money back into the club. He did all those things. So there's there are contradictions again. I know I'm repeating myself here.
Do you feel that
It's
the sort
bizarre.
of that K Club set and what surrounded him changed him?
I think DJ Carey was always DJ Carey. There were signs maybe that he was different to others because he was special. Listen, when he was preparing for the Kilkenny senior team, when he was a young fella, he was sent down to Langton's Hotel in Kilkenny to bulk him up for the senior team. Not many guys would get the best efficient steak dinners in Langton's because they couldn't risk letting him home to Gowran in case he didn't come back for training that night. So his mentors maybe were wise because they were looking for the next great Kilkenny hurler and they knew he was a little bit small. So were making sure he was well fed. And that's where he went after school, and then he went back for the training sessions. That's a little different to lots of his other teammates.
So he was special and spoiled from an early age.
He was.
But this is a different level when you start mixing with what was around the K Club and that set in those Celtic Tiger years. I mean, that was really, it was roaring. It was booming. The money, the Gucci loafers were he probably had a few pairs of them. Was the money at this point coming from his small business, or was it coming from his relationship with Sarah Newman?
There's no doubt about it. Sarah Newman was a multimillionaire, and DJ had the fame and the notoriety, and Sarah Newman had the money. So that's what she brought to the table. So
together they went into some sort. Did they buy the properties together?
They bought some property together and some property separately, but in total between them at one stage they had 5 very exclusive properties. Sarah had a property on Alma Road in Monkstown. DJ had a property. They had properties in Mount Juliet and the K Club. They had 2 in the K Club, 1 in Mount Juliet. And Sarah had Chalet Grace in an exclusive ski resort called Zermatt in Switzerland. So, like many couples in the Celtic Tiger, they overextended themselves. The banks, AIB, gave them loans on properties, and when the crash came, they realised that these properties were not worth a fraction of what they paid for them. And they got burnt badly by that because obviously the banks have to be repaid.
Yeah.
And they came to call in those loans. And that's when everything really went pear-shaped with the relationship, it seems. Now, there could have been other things behind the scenes.
And was that when was that? Are you talking up to 2010, 11?
Yeah, I would say around.
It took a while, didn't it?
It took a while. So that was going on. But like the death of the relationship as documented in the Sunday Independent, Niamh Horn did an interview, really insightful interview with Sarah Newman, and she described how DJ called time on the relationship in 2012. They tried a last-ditch attempt to save it, to go on a holiday to Mauritius. It didn't work. But that finances seemed to, reading between the lines and reading some of the quotes, finances were a big part of it. They were under a lot of pressure.
And she would later say that she made a complaint to Gardaí about him.
That's right.
What was that in relation to?
In a recent interview, again with Niamh Horn in the Sunday Independent, around the time that the Jubilee celebration for Kilkenny was at Croke Park, and there was a lot of controversy over whether DJ would show or not, because of course he was on that All-Ireland team in 2000 and his name was called out in Croke Park that day. So around the time of that Jubilee celebration, Sarah Newman did the interview, and she said that at the time she made the Gardaí aware of her concerns about DJ Carey. Now, there's not much detail about what she said or what she reported to Gardaí, but she certainly said that she reported this matter to Gardaí. Unfortunately, DJ's deception got much worse after the breakdown of that relationship. He seems to have been more desperate for money, and he peddled his cancer story. It evolved over the years. I have different versions of the story. Some details are similar, but some people said to me brain cancer and some said multiple myeloma. Multiple myeloma seems to be the one he chose in recent years. Brain cancer, brain tumours, aneurysms, that was kind of around, those stories were around after the breakup with Sarah and maybe sometime before the breakup with Sarah, but she wasn't aware. He would sometimes say things like, I like to keep my private health stuff as private as possible, or can you keep this under the radar? Things, phrases like that. So people respected his privacy around his health.
I'm Nicola Tallant and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts.